The banana?
Yeah.
Okay, so welcome everyone. Here we are on Parshat Chukat, and we are just after Gimel Tammuz, the 3rd of Tammuz, and right before the 12th and the 13th of Tammuz, which the previous Rebbe was freed from prison, and the 17th of Tammuz, which begins the 3 weeks of mourning where they broke into the walls of Yerushalayim, and then there was the destruction. So here we have the redemption, like it says that Hashem always gives the terufa lefnei hamaka. In other words, there's always the solution before the trouble hits. Mm-hmm. And so this is a very special month. It's also very hot, the sun is shining, but that means that there's a lot of godliness and we are capable of doing a lot of good things. On the 17th of the 17th, today is the 7th, so we have 10 more days. In 10 days is the fast. Okay, so we begin with Parshat Chukat. Chukat, chok is it means that there's no reason for it. Chok is a law that it says that Hashem tells Moshe and Aaron that they should fulfill the mitzvah of para aduma, the red heifer. It's a cow that has entirely red hair, without blemish, never had a yoke, and they should take this red heifer and slaughter it. The cow is burned. The ashes are mixed with spring water, and this mixture becomes a purifying substance to cleanse those who became ritually impure. So the Torah tells us who's pure and who's impure. In other words, the impure means somebody who came in contact with a dead body or whatever. So it says this is the chok of the Torah that God has commanded. So first of all, you can understand it in two ways. On one level, it means that the law of the red heifer is the ultimate decree. It's like super rational. And many of the Torah, the concepts in Torah, we can understand, but some you cannot. So this is something that is above your understanding, and this is God commanded, and you have to keep it. The deeper meaning is that all of the Torah, in essence, is a divine decree. And even though some of them are clothed, we could say, in garments of reason, we are told that we should keep the commandments because it's a divine decree. Even if we understand it with our rational mind, it's not good enough because, somebody could say, okay, you're not allowed to steal. But in this, from this person, it's a mitzvah to steal, or this person deserves to be dead. So when we put our own rational mind to things, it's never the same. We have to know we're doing it even though we understand that it's not right. Oh, you took it out? Okay. You're going to put it in the fridge? Okay. Just put it in the fridge. I didn't take them. Okay. So in other words, that everything that Hashem, that all the mitzvot, all the commandments of the Torah should be kept in a supernatural way. In other words, these are God's commandments, even though, like we say, they're in the garments of reason. In everything that Hashem taught Moshe, he would tell him what causes contamination and how to purify it. But when it came to the laws of someone who came in contact with a dead body, Moshe said to him, if one is contaminated, he's contaminated by touching a dead body, so how can he be purified? And Hashem didn't answer him. And Moshe was like, the Medrash says he became pale and he was like weak. And then when it comes to this portion of the red heifer, so Hashem says to Moshe, this is the way to purify, this is the person purifies himself. So Moshe says to Hashem, this is purification. So Hashem said it's a chok, it's a decree. And no creature, no limited, a person who's created can comprehend my decrees. And the Medrash says that King Solomon, who was very, very, very smart, and he knew almost everything, he said, of all of the Torah commandments, he says, I understood. But the chapter of the Red Heifer, he said, I examined it and I questioned it and I searched it, and I thought that I'll understand it. He said, but it's distant from me. He says, you can't understand it. So this is one of the decrees that we have absolutely no rationalization for, taking a red cow and burning it, and there's a whole process of how it becomes with a tree and a grass and a red string, all together, put together with the water, and that's what purifies a person. There were 9 red heifers that were prepared from the time that the Jewish people were commanded this mitzvah until the second temple was destroyed. The first Moshe was prepared. The second was by Ezra. If you remember, he built the second Beis Hamikdash. And then there were another 7 that were prepared from Ezra till the temple's destruction. And we're told that the 10th, Parah Adumah, the 10th red heifer will be prepared by Mashiach, which will be very soon. I know sometimes you hear, they found a red heifer, and it's, what happened? Did it die? Okay. It seems like it got hot all of a sudden, right?
Is it not working?
You know what? I have a better idea. I'm going to open it over here so we can see directly on here. Open this one. That should do the job. This one somehow. Okay. Now, so the whole process of preparing the water of purification and how it's used and all the laws of impurity and purity are in this portion, and the entire cow, the entire heifer, her skin, her flesh, her blood, it says even the waist was all burnt together with a piece of cedar wood, a bundle of hyssop, which is some sort of grass, and a scarlet thread. Then the ashes were collected, and the Medrash gives a parable that a maid's child once dirtied the royal palace. So the king says, the child dirtied, then let the mother come and clean up. Let the mother clean up the child's filth. So by the same token, God said, let the red heifer atone for the deed of the golden calf. See, the red heifer, the cow, is the mother of the golden calf, which caused a lot of trouble amongst the Jews. So, yeah, and now the interesting thing is that everyone who's involved in preparing the red heifer from the beginning to the end becomes impure. So they purify the one who's impure, but it impures the one who's pure. You understand what I'm saying? And Hashem said, I made a chok, a decree, and I decreed a decree, and you cannot transgress. And this is Hashem's decree. But what we do know is the fact that the ashes of the heifer purify the contaminated and contaminate the pure teaches us a very, very important lesson in our daily lives. If a fellow Jew was infected or became impure or corrupted or whatever you want to say, do not hesitate. The Torah teaches us not to hesitate, to get involved and do everything in our power to bring them back, to rehabilitate them. And even if it might cost you you might get tainted or whatever, because you're coming in contact with somebody who's like in a bad place. Remember that the Torah commands the Kohen to purify his fellow Jew, even though his own level of purity is going to be diminished while he's doing that. So this is a very important lesson that even if it means you going down in a level like you might contaminate yourself, don't hesitate to help a fellow Jew and bring him up from wherever he is. Okay, now we come to the next, the piece of the portion is where Miriam passes away, Moshe's sister. This is the 40th year of their journey in the wilderness, if you remember. They're just about to enter the land of Israel. And the Torah tells us that when, about the death of Miriam, she passes away. And the people of Israel came to Kadesh. This was in the Midbar Tzin. We see it every time we pass there, Midbar Tzin. And she's buried there. Miriam is buried there. Right after she passes away, the Torah tells us there's no water. No water. And they're all thirsty. And they come to Moshe and they complain. And they said, like we need water, we're thirsty. So from here we learn that the well that accompanied the Jews in the desert was in the merit of Miriam. And when she passed away, the well disappeared. So there's suddenly no water, so they all become thirsty. So there were three great providers amongst the people of Israel, and that was Moshe, Aaron, and Miriam. And the three wonderful gifts that the Jews received was the well from Miriam, the clouds from Aaron, and the man from Moshe. So again, when Miriam died, so the well was removed and there was no water, but it came back in the merit of the other two, of Moshe and Aaron. When Aaron passed away, the clouds of glory were removed. It says that then the Canaanite, the king of Arad, wanted to fight against the Jews, and if there's no cloud, the clouds were what held the arrows. It absorbed anyone who wanted to fight against Israel. And now all of a sudden there's no clouds. And they heard that Aaron passed away, and they said, oh, now it's a good time to attack the Jews because the clouds of glory were protecting them, and now they're not there. And it came back in the merit of Moshe. Now we know that the whole generation that was left in the desert already died. This is the 40th year. So the ones who now we're talking about in the 40th year were the ones who were destined to enter. They were the ones who were going to live and go into the land. It was the next generation. Remember, those who were 20 and up, they died throughout the 40 years. Every year there was like 15,000 people that dug their graves, and they never came up, until the last year. Everybody came out alive. This was the next generation. And it's interesting that the Torah tells us all the stories about the desert. It's either in the first year or the 40th, first and second year, and the 40th year. Like, the Torah is not just a history book. It's not a storybook. It just tells us the pieces that we're supposed to learn from, even though there must have been a lot of interesting things that happened in between. But, okay. So where are we up to? So what happens next? So now the people are coming to complain. We don't have water, and Moshe and Aaron come to the tent, and they Hashem appears before them. Like, what are we going to do? People are thirsty. So Hashem tells Moshe, take your stick, gather the people around the rock, and speak to the rock. This is the famous story. Mm-hmm. Speak to the rock, and Moshe, you can just imagine all the people around, and everybody's like anxious. They want the water, and they came to the wrong rock. And Moshe speaks to the rock, and it didn't work. So then he finds the right rock, and he hits it. He hits it twice, because the first time he hit it, just a little bit of water came out, and the second time he hit it, the water started gushing out, and there was enough water for the people to drink and for the flocks and for the animals and everything.
Why did he hit it?
Why did he?
If he talked to the first one,
why didn't he talk to the second one? Okay, that was his sin, actually. Because of that, he didn't go into Israel. So the question is, why was it, first of all, why was it so bad? Why was he punished so bad? I mean, okay, so he was supposed to speak to the rock, instead he hit it. And that's a real harsh punishment. You're not going to merit to bring the people into the land of Israel. So the question is, Rashi says that the fact was that he got angry. It wasn't because he hit the rock, but he got angry and he said, Shimuna Hamorim, which means, hear now, you rebels. And he got angry at all the people, like he called them rebels, which he shouldn't have. See, so first of all, we have a lot of lessons in education of how speaking to children who make you upset and get you angry. Sometimes you just get upset and you give a punch, you hit them. You should always know that speaking is the way to do it. Talking to them, not calling them names, not saying you're rebels, because that's what they'll be if that's what you call them. So the reason, what Hashem told him to take his stick, so maybe if he told him to take a stick, maybe he could have thought that maybe he meant he was supposed to hit the stone. And but we find that on other occasions that Moshe spoke in anger, he didn't get punished. There were many other times where he got angry and he wasn't punished. So we're told that, first of all, he said to them, it's like a lack of faith, because he said, shall we get you water out of this rock? What do you think? The water, there's going to be. He should have realized, like, it's sort of lack of faith in Hashem could do anything. So the words that he said were sort of against Hashem, where Levi Yitzchak of Berdichev says that there's two sides of the same coin. Okay, if a leader's influence on the community comes through harsh words, like he rebukes them, then it causes a certain environment, and he's going to have to impose his will to get the people to serve him. In other words, because you're speaking to them in anger. You know how it is when you speak to somebody out of anger, so it's like you have to force them to do what you want. But if he influences the community lovingly, and he lifts them up to a higher place, so on their own will, they're going to want to improve themselves. And this is the way you reach your goal. So Hashem said, because you did not believe in me, to sanctify me in the eyes of the children of Israel. And this was his mistake. In other words, it was in front of everybody. When he did it to Hashem, Hashem forgave him. But when it's in front of everybody, then Hashem, had to prove his point, and he punished him. We're told that it could be compared to the case of a king who had a friend. And his friend was very arrogant towards the king privately, and he used harsh words. But the king didn't lose his temper. But then when his arrogance was displayed in front of the presence of his people, of the king's people, then the king passed the sentence of death. So you can use this parable in this sense, where Hashem said to Moshe, when you spoke to me angrily, it was just between me and you. But now that it was done in the presence of the public, I can't overlook it. And because you did not believe me in the eyes of the children of Israel, means it was public. That's what the Medrash tells us. So therefore he was punished. Now, interestingly enough, remember the astrologers read in the stars that a leader is going to be born, and he's going to die in water. And that's why they made the decree that every male child that is born will be thrown into the river, because they said, we don't know which one is going to be the leader of the Jews, so we're going to throw all the boys into the river, so that, because in the stars they saw that his death will come through by water. So they thought he's going to drown in the water, but in truth it was because of this well of water, because of the stone, because he hit the stone. So here, this was the reason, the astrologers got it a little bit confused. They got it wrong. Um, okay. So Hashem tells Moshe, listen, you took out 600,000 people from Egypt, but you buried them in the desert. And now you're going to bring a different generation to Israel. So they're going to think that the people, the generation in the desert has no share in the world to come. They're going to think, that's it. So better you stay behind. And when the time will come, you'll enter with them. And that's one of the reasons why Hashem left Moshe with his flock. Actually, Moshe didn't want to. He didn't want to leave his flock, and he was willing. I mean, even though he prayed 515 times in Parshat V'etchanan, we know he pleaded with Hashem, but then Hashem said that what are people going to say? That you caused the flock to be carried off, you caused them to get stuck in the desert. So that's why it says you won't bring this congregation. You're going to bring you have to bring the other one. The one that you took out of Egypt is the one that you're going to have to bring into Israel when the time will come. Now, the Jews continue and they come to the camp of Kadesh. It's the border of Edom. Edom we know is Esav. And Moshe sends messengers to the king of Edom, and he reminds him of the history of the Jews, and he says, we're related, and you and Yaakov were brothers, your ancestors, and now we're coming through your border. Please allow us to pass through your land, and we will only pass through. We won't even go on the fields, and we won't cause any damage. We're going to and we're not even going to drink our own water. We're going to buy water from you. In other words, you'll gain on us. When you have tourists, you get people come, they buy things, you get money. So he said, just please let us pass through. Now, when he says, it says, we will not drink the water of the well. So the Parshanim, they say, why does it say the water of the wells? It should say the water of the wells. Why does it say the well? So the explanation is that when Moshe was saying that we have our own water, we have our own well, and we have man from heaven, like we have our own food and we have our own drink, but we won't drink from our own, and we won't eat from our own. We will purchase food and water from you to benefit you, even though we have. And here the Torah teaches us also something, what good conduct is, that if a person goes to a country that's not his, and even though he has what he needs, he shouldn't eat of what he has, but he should buy from the shopkeeper or from the balach sanya, from the inn that he's staying in. He should let him benefit and buy food from him, if it's kosher. Of course, if it's proper, kosher food, then he should give him the benefit, which is, see how the Torah is like so sensitive and making sure that nobody loses out. But of course, King Edom refuses. And not only does he refuse, he says, if you dare come through my land, I'm going to fight you. I'm going out on war against you. And Moshe tries again, and he says, listen, we'll pay whatever price you say. We'll pay for the food. It was like, we'll save them this way they have to go all the way around. Just let us go through. And we'll pay whatever price you say. And the king still refuses. And he sends a heavy army against Israel. And Moshe says, you know what, let's avoid this conflict and let's go around. And they turn around and they continue on their journey in a different direction. When they come to Har Hahor, okay, the mountain on the border of Edom, there's a mountain called Har Hahor, which means it's a mountain on top of a mountain. It's like a small apple perched on the top of a big one, okay? Like a little one on a big one. So it's like a mountain on top of a mountain. And so Hashem tells Moshe that Aaron's time has come. And he says, it's time for his death. So he tells him to take Aaron and his son Elazar to go up the mountain where everybody sees, everybody watches, okay? And he tells him to go to this designated place, and he should take off Aaron's clothes of the high priest and dress Elazar in these clothes. Now, when they come down the mountain, so everybody understood that Aaron passed away, and they mourned there for 30 days. But the whole story here with Aaron is interesting because when Hashem says to Moshe, do me a favor and tell Aaron that it's time for him to go, I'm ashamed to tell him. Like, why doesn't Hashem tell him? He tells Moshe to tell him. So what does Moshe do? This is the Medrash tells us. He wakes up early in the morning. He goes to Aaron and he says, Aaron, my brother. And Aaron says, why did you come so early in the morning? So Moshe says, well, there's something in the Torah that occupied my mind during the night and I couldn't sleep. So I got up early and I came to you. So Aaron says, what is this thing? And he says, I don't remember what it was, but I know that it was in the book of Bereshis, and let's read from it. So they take out the book of Bereshis and they start reading it. And while they're reading each chapter, Moshe says, Hashem did well, Hashem created well. And when they come to the creation of man, Moshe says, what can we say about man who brought death into the world? So Aaron says, Moshe, can you say that in this manner we do not accept the divine decree if this is what Hashem chose? And Moshe says, I ruled over the angels, and you stopped the Malach HaMavis. Remember we spoke about him with the Ketores. He sent him to stop the angel of death when there was a plague. And the angel says, Hashem sent me. And Aaron says, but Moshe sent me. And he says, Moshe sent you, but Hashem sent me. And he said, Moshe doesn't do anything without Hashem's permission. And so Aaron immediately felt that its time has come. And he said, he understood that he was going to die. And he says, are you prepared to die? And he says, yes. So he says, okay, let's go up the mountain. And the three of them, Moshe, Aaron, and Elazar, go up the mountain in front of all of the people. And when they came up to the top of the mountain, it says that the Medrash tells us that like a cave opened up for them. And Moshe said to Aaron, go into the cave. And he goes into the cave and they see there's a bed. There's like a made-up bed and a candle. And he says, lay down on the bed and straighten out your arms and close your mouth. And this was like a death. This is like a mavet neshika. In other words, like the kiss of God, and his neshama was taken. And the Shekhinah, like the divine providence, prime presence, comes down and kissed him. And at that point, Moshe says, that's the kind of death I want. I think that's what everybody wants. Yes. And so he said to him, so later on, it's true, Moshe did die on the mountain, just like his brother Har in Har. So then when they came out of the cave and everybody saw that only Moshe and Elazar are coming down, so everybody said, where's Aaron? Where's Aaron? Everybody loved Aaron because he was the one who made peace between husband and wife, and he was, Ohev Shalom, Rodev Shalom. He was a person who everybody loved him. And now and they said, where's Aaron? And they said, he died. And they said, how could the angel of death strike him? He stood by the angel of death and he stopped the angel of death. How could it be? So bring him back. And they demanded that they should bring him back. If not, we'll stone you. These people are hot-headed. So Moshe again had to pray to Hashem and said, take away the suspicion. They're suspicious of us. Like, what should we do? And so Hashem opened up the cave, and everybody saw Aaron laying on the bed, and they understood that Aaron had died. This is what the Medrash Rabbah tells us, the story of Aaron and his death. Anyway, the king, Har. It's like a mountain on a mountain. Okay, now everybody's like, oh, they have to do a long route all around Edom, and they're all exhausted. And again, they're going to complain, of course. So, I mean, you could just imagine in the desert, it's not so easy. And so they complain. And Hashem sends the snake, the venomous snake, to punish the people. And again, it says that what happens, the script tells us this, that the people spoke against God and against Moshe. And then in the song where they sing, they say they believed in God and Moshe. So we're taught that if they believe in Moshe, they believe in Hashem. And this teaches us that if you don't believe in the shepherd of Israel, if you don't believe in Moshe, it's as if you don't believe in Hashem. So when it says they spoke against God, against Moshe, they spoke against Moshe. And even if they spoke against Hashem, then it's just like speaking against Moshe. But anyway, this comes to teach us that whoever speaks against the leader that Hashem chose, it's as if he spoke against Hashem. So Hashem tells Moshe, make a copper serpent, this is the sign of the Beit Merkachat, of the right,
Yeah.
of the pharmacies. Make a copper serpent, place it on a tall pole. This is where it comes from. And when they look up at the serpent, then they're focusing their on Hashem in heaven, like they're raising their eyes to heaven. So those who were bitten by the snake will be healed. And the question is it the snake who kills? There's a song, I'm Nachash Mimit or Nachash Mechayeh. Is it the snake who kills or the snake that heals? And again, it's just like the Ketoret. The Ketoret was the one that caused them to die, brought the plague, and the Ketoret was the one that stopped the plague. So Hashem says it's not the snake, it's not the snake, and it's not the Ketoret. It's your actions. If you lift your eyes up to heaven, you are saved. Always go with Hashem, and you should know that you will be saved. That's the best way. Hashem is everywhere, but se'u marom enechem. In other words, lift your eyes above the physical, because what you see, there's something way above it. God is above it, and you don't see it. So just the letters Shema, Shin Mem Ayin are the Roshei Tevot of Se'u Marom Enechem. Always lift your eyes up above, and above the mundane, and look at the spiritual. There's God behind it all. I just heard an interesting story today about a person who he had a restaurant, and he was very careful with the kashrus, not to cause anybody to eat anything that wasn't kosher. And he had a separate dairy kitchen, a separate meat kitchen. And one day his wife comes into the meat kitchen and she sees something dairy over there, and she got all hysterical, and she tells her husband, look what happened, got mixed up. And he was so upset about it that he decided to sell the restaurant. And he sold it, and he made a lot of money. And along comes a guy and he says, listen, I have a very good opportunity for you to buy diamonds. This was in Amsterdam, where they sell them, Belgium, in Belgium. And so he said, listen, and he trusted him, and he bought whatever it was. He bought the diamonds, and he gave away all his money. And then it turns out when he went to sell them, that this guy cheated him, and they weren't worth anything. So he was like without any money. He didn't even have what to eat with. So he says, you know what, maybe I'll lend some money, get a ticket, go to America, and maybe I'll make some money over there, and I'll be able to support my family. So he goes off to America, and he made a little bit of money, and he finally was able to give back the loan, and he sent tickets to his family that they should come live with him in America. This happened a very short while before the war. All those people in that area were killed. The person who sold him the diamonds actually was saved, and he asked him to come, and when he came, he welcomed him, and he said, "What can I do for you?" And he says, "Like, is this how you repay somebody who cheated you?" And he said, "You have no idea that because of what you did, you actually saved my life."
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes the darkest things and the worst thing that a person could do to you could be the biggest favor.
Mm-hmm.
You can never know. So that's what it means to look a little bit above. What's behind what you see is not always what really is there. Anyway, so then we come to the next war, where the Amorites. The Amorites, they border also on Israel, and they decided that they're going to also harm the Jews. And what they did was, let me tell you about this, the miracle. It was in the valleys of Arnon. A man could stand, they tell you, on top of one mountain and speak to the person on the other mountain, but there were 7 miles between them. And then in between, there was a road between, like, down into the valley, okay, that you were able to get to Israel. They had to pass through between these two, in the valley between these two mountains. So all the nations came together, and the armies, and some of them took position in the valley, some of them in the cliffs, and some of them, on top. And it says that the one side of the mountain had blitot, like they were sticking out, and the other side, in other words, Hashem made a miracle, and what happened was that he brought the two mountains together, and one got into another. In other words, like they clicked together, and all those people that were there, that were ready to kill the Jews, were actually squished. So there was a wonderful miracle that happened, and the Jews didn't even know it. And so, in other words, they thought, the Israelis are going to come down into the valley, and we're going to confront them, and we'll harass them, and we'll slay them, or whatever. Well, when they reached that spot, it wasn't necessary, because, like we said, Hashem made the opposite mountain enter into the caves of the other mountain, and everybody was in there was killed. So, and this is it says Arnon is the boundary of Moab, between Moab and the Amorites. Okay, so the mountain is in the land of Moab, and the caves usually didn't move, but when the mountain, Hashem made a miracle, and he moved them together. So, like I said, the Jews didn't even know that they had such a miracle. But then what Hashem did was, the water sort of washed out the skulls and the arms and the legs. Everything came down, and the Jews are seeing, look at this, from the valley are coming limbs, and they realized the great miracle that happened, and they sang a song. It says they sang Shira La Hashem, because of the victory. So in other words, okay, so this is the song of victory. Then they continued northward along the eastern border of Israel, and then they fight. 1 second. So after they defeat the Amorites and they capture their land, so they camp on the border of Bashan, which was ruled by the giant king of Og. And Og also gathers his army, and he thinks he's going to battle the Jews. And Hashem tells Moshe, do not fear. I'm going to give Og into your hands. And they defeat Og, and his sons and all his army is completely washed out, and they conquer the land. And they continue on their journey northward, and they camp in the plains of Moab opposite Yericho. This is the end of the portion. That's how the portion ends. Chukat. Adkan. Till here. So we have a lot of interesting ideas in this week's portion, about hitting the rock, So, there's so many explanations about Moshe hitting the rock and why he hit it, and he could have spoken, and maybe he thought once Hashem told him to hit, so maybe now he also meant to hit, and you could just imagine the Jews all around, and they're all like anxious, and like they got him, they want to do it fast, really sure he had good intentions, but yeah, this is a lesson for all of us. Any questions?
There's a lot that's relevant in the world we're living in at the moment.
Exactly.